Go to bigheadsmedia.com for more great podcasts.
Welcome to Dig on America, where we speak truth to power. Every week, we give you the dig on how American history, policies, and media created the social and political issues we face today. DOA is independent media supported by listeners, but they'll tell you we're just fake news, deep state propaganda, funded by George Soros, the Clinton Foundation, BLM Marxists, and
Hawk and Animal tag team champion of the world.
I was going to say Tim Burton.
Oh, you got the Tim Burton shirt on. So there you go. Tim Burton making a comeback in the Batman franchise soon. By the way, your nice t-shirt, but I think I win the t-shirt game today with the old school.
You never even played that game. Bullshit.
Oh my God, did I? I still remember, and the first Zelda, I still remember how to get through the forest, up, down, left, right.
That's
to get through the woods or whatever it was.
That's incorrect. It's the same as the super. It's the same as the Contra code. So
it's up, down, left, right.
No, man.
To get out of the lost woods, pretty sure. All right, he's going to go into the rabbit hole of political Zelda correctness.
Do you have an ocarina? Do you have an ocarina?
I do not know, but I know how to do the Macarena.
No. See, you don't even have an ocarina.
Hey, Margarita.
You don't even have the tools necessary to be a Zelda master. How would you know? Do you practice?
We used to call remember they came out with the second one where it wasn't the same setup. You kind of just moved two-dimensionally.
It was a side scroller. It was a 2D side scroller.
He would jump up in the air and put his sword between his legs and land on people with what they called the pelvic thrust, destroying all of the otherworldly enemy on his way to rescuing the Princess Zelda, the brave Link. Welcome into Dig on America. This is Jason Dutch. I am here with the second most handsome man in podcasting.
Yeah, Big Hoss will be here later, y'all.
Yeah, number one will be here later. Get Jenna in the chat. Welcome to everyone in the chat. Glad to see a few people in there so far already chatting away.
What up, Dino? Tim Bristol, Ollie Man,
TB, Tim Bristol,
Marissa. Hey, girl.
Hey, girl. With us today, we have a candidate again, and there's our little ongoing series of candidate promotion goes on. And special treat today, we have a gentleman running for state office. With us today, we have Michael Owens, Dr. Michael Owens, who is running for the Secretary of State. I will be the secretary to the boss of the world. Dr. Michael Owens, welcome to the show.
Gents, it's great to be here. Happy to be here tonight. Running for Secretary of State.
Running for Secretary of Joe's Electric. It's Dr. Michael Owens. So welcome in. Thank you for coming on the show. Our guest last week, Dino Moore. I was talking to him after we got off the stream, and he's from Georgia. And I was like, "You don't happen to know who Dr. Michael Owens is?" He goes, "Yeah, I know exactly who that is." He's like, "Is he coming on your show?" I'm like, "Yeah, he's gonna be here next week." He goes, "You get them damn heavy hitters." I'm like, and I was like, "Well, I'm glad to hear we have a heavy hitter on the show, and we'll find out how big of a heavy hitter you are, sir." All right, so let's roll into everything. Give us, if Mikey will give you center stage here, and you can give the people just your quick little elevator pitch, who you are, why you're running.
Yeah, so thanks for that. My name is, again, Michael Owens. I am a candidate for Secretary of State in Georgia. Incredibly important role. I know that a lot of times you're used to having congressional candidates candidates running for U.S. Congress, U.S. Senate. This is a state level race in Georgia, but it could not be more important with everything that's going on nationally and particularly within the state of Georgia as it relates to voting rights, election security, and the ability for people to have their voice heard. It's quickly become one of the most important races in the country. I dare say one of the most more races that's been put out in front as far as the importance of it, because this is America. We do believe in democracy and want to make sure that people have the right to go to the polls and have their voices heard. It's been a challenge here in the state of Georgia. I want to do something about it. I'm a Marine Corps veteran, Semper Fi. Spent 8 years in the Marine Corps, working in communications, engineering, and counterterrorism. But for the last 20 years of my career, I focused squarely on cybersecurity, ensuring that all of us, our information, our data, our critical infrastructures are safe, mainly from foreign actors who will try to infiltrate our systems and do bad things, but also from domestic activities that take place as well. So,
January 6th.
Yeah. So being a United States Marine, I swore allegiance to this country and swore to defend the Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic. I do view what's going on in America across the country, but particularly in Georgia, what's happening with our election systems and the ability for us to be able to have fair, free, and secure elections as something that everyone should believe in. So this is why I'm running, because I know that it's important for everyone to have their voices heard, to ensure that from an elections perspective, we have people that have a main goal of strengthening our democracy by having more people actually participate in it. There's a lot of stuff I want to do as well to be able to help small businesses, entrepreneurs, and veterans when it comes to being able to establish businesses, grow businesses, and take part in this American dream that we have, so everyone will be able to thrive. That's that in a nutshell is why I'm running. But I think it's vitally important for everyone to understand that the Secretary of State's office for a long time has been this backroom bureaucratic type office. Most people aren't sure of what the Secretary of State does or what they're responsible for. But It is the top elections office. The Secretary of State.
Wait, you make license plates. Why don't you go in there and you bang the license plate yourself?
I will say in different states, the role of Secretary of State varies. So it can vary from state to state as far as what the actual responsibilities are. But for the most part, the Secretary of State is the one that has oversight of the elections process throughout the state. And normally there's a business component to it as well, and that fluctuates a bit. But in the state of Georgia, the Secretary of State's office is responsible for the registration of all businesses within the state. They're also responsible for professional licensing. So whether you're a nurse, a chiropractor, truck driver, it could be a paralegal, most of any license that you need to, or any profession you have to have a license for, the Secretary of State's office is responsible for that. And you're also responsible for the state archives as well. So, and keeper of the flag. It's the responsibility of the Secretary of the State.
Keeper of the, okay. So you already answered one of my questions, which was like, what are the duties of the Secretary of State? Because I knew it was different state to state.
Yes.
So do you have anything to do with the DMV?
Not directly, not within the state of Georgia. There's the Department of Motor Vehicles and there's the Department of Revenue in the state of Georgia, which is directly responsible for that.
Because in Illinois, our Secretary of State is like the head of the DMV, like he gets the final say so whatever. We have the worst DMV in the country. It is atrocious.
You've seen Zootopia?
Oh my God.
In the movie Zootopia, where they have the sloths and they go, "What's your license plate number?" LV62514. L. That's exactly how it is in Illinois. Yeah.
And I really want to run for governor of Illinois. And my only running point is going to be, I'm going to reform the DMV, because you should be able to get in and out in less than 6 to 7 business weeks. Like, it's bad. It's so terrible.
In the state of Georgia, we feel that way about our voting lines. You should be able to get in and out of a voting line in less than 5, 6, or 8 hours.
Right. It's an all-day affair.
I think Jesse White does a pretty good job, though, in Illinois for the most part. But I think he does. I think he's a decent Secretary of State.
It cost me $600 to register a car that costs $1,500. Come on, man.
But he doesn't control the cost. He controls the process. So I I understand what you're saying, though. But
he ain't advocating for me on that.
So I have two important questions for you, and then we'll get to the game. First question: in Georgia, you said you're there to support the flag, the old flag or the new Georgia flag? I'm just wondering if they still use the old one.
They no longer use the old one. The flag in question
it's still flown by true patriots around the neighborhood, though, I'm sure.
I ran across one of those flags just a couple of weeks ago. Ironically, I was participating in a parade and commemorating Martin Luther King Jr. And
the
parade route happened to go right past the flag. Although I will say that flag was in a cemetery, which I can only expect was maybe had some Confederate soldiers buried, and so I understand that. Again, there's a time and place for everything. So if you're commemorating, soldiers that fought in a particular side of an army, then so be it. As long as you keep it away from public buildings, government buildings,
The Capitol building.
Yeah, Capitol buildings.
Second question. Again, you're from Georgia, so you are definitely endorsed by Marjorie Taylor Greene. That's correct, right? We'll just get that out of the way.
Do not tank my campaign tonight. I absolutely do not support Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. I can say that the county that I live in, which is Cobb County, third most populous county in the state, I was elected twice as chairman of the Democratic Party in that county, which we worked really hard to make sure that we expanded the voting in that county to over 50,000 more voters. And the county now, I won't say consistently votes blue, but let's say we've been able to elect quite a few Democratic candidates.
Mhm.
With the redistricting that was just done this past year, Marjorie Taylor Greene now does have a component of the county in which I live in, which I don't know many people that are actually happy about that. But
Really? Let me ask you a real quick question. Is she nationally? She's a joke. Is she locally?
I will say that Marjorie Taylor Greene was duly elected by people who understood where her positions were. She ran on her positions and she won that seat. Now, I mean, because it boils down to congressional districts, right? What that district is. And, it was a challenge from day one, the position she ran on, the things she stood for, the rhetoric that she talked about. She talked about that same stuff when she was on the campaign trail. So, so she didn't, she didn't pull a switcheroo on anyone. But I'm still happy to say that the people that live in my county, as representative of what we stand for, aren't supportive of the rhetoric she's been talking about. And so it made quite the stir when the district was redrawn, and part of her district now resides in my county. So it's not a very fortunate thing, but yes, I can say she was. That rhetoric that you hear now was the same rhetoric that was on the campaign trail and that she was elected with.
Yeah, it was pretty gnarly stuff that she was talking
about. Unfortunate. I will say though, and speaking on a national platform, that Marjorie Taylor Greene does not speak for the majority of Georgians. I think that probably doesn't need to be said, but I will say it. She does not speak for the majority of Georgians who believe in a lot of things that unfortunately she seems not to.
Also, crime in Gotham. That's I can't imagine that she speaks for anyone except for she's a butt of a joke in this show almost every week. So we're going to play a game with you real quick. We're going to loosen it up a little bit before we get to some of your policy issues, sir. So my esteemed colleague will put a little graphic up here on the board.
Oh boy.
And I will call an audible. Georgia State 31. Hut. All right, we're going to play a game called 4 Down Territory. We will ask you 4 questions. You will give us 4 answers. Somewhere
the world is watching.
Yeah, 30 seconds to a minute. These are the most important pressing questions you will ever be asked in your life.
Is your heart beating, Mr. Owens? You should be very afraid. These are hard questions.
So I'll ask you the first question. Before
I want to go first
on the show. Okay, go ahead. You can go first.
Now, Mr. Owens, you said you were part of the Marine Corps. What's your favorite MRE?
Spaghetti and meatballs, without a doubt.
Everyone says the damn pasta. Everyone. It must be the only edible thing that they give them.
Just about. I don't know. Yeah. I'm a Marine. All of them are edible. Just depends on how hungry you are.
He asked that question to our guests last week, and they both came back with a pasta answer as well. So
it's something about that pasta.
So before the show, we were joking with you that you didn't get the memo about the pop culture shirt, which I win again, Zelda. if you had gone, you kind of joked that, hey, you could go change your shirt. Had you gone to change your shirt into a pop culture reference shirt, what shirt were you going to grab?
Woo. It would depend on my mood. Depends on my mood. I mean, pop culture shirt could have been my Samuel L. Jackson shirt.
Okay.
Pulp Fiction or Avengers? Okay, Pulp Fiction. Perfect. My wallet is the one. All right, Mikey.
I kind of wanted to know what the shirt was too. That's a good one. I don't know. Pass. I was too caught up in the answer. I was like, I was thinking, I was waiting for the response as opposed to thinking of the next question.
All right. Well, I'll keep it somewhat pop culture here, because I'm interested in your pop culture. Oh, go. So this I started twice now, and you've interrupted me both times. But go ahead, sir.
You're welcome.
Yeah. It's your world.
What is the last show that you binge watched?
Oh, Squid Games.
Oh yeah, I did watch all that in like one sitting. Squid Game was awesome. I like Squid Game.
I haven't watched a second of that yet.
What?
No, but my son watches all the, and he's 7, so like he's not old enough to watch that show.
No, do not let him watch that.
Well, he wants to watch it though, because he watches all, like, how when they come out with a movie, like any movie these days, YouTubers come up with like these cartoons that do the songs like based on, like, they'll be like, Indoraptor, he's gonna eat you, and like it'll be like Jurassic Park themed or Indiana Jones themed or whatever. The Squid Game ones have like all these Squid Game videos, so he doesn't realize what the show is. He just thinks it's like the videos where there are a bunch of people singing and dancing, and he's like, I want to watch Squid Games. We're gonna play red light, green light. I'm like, no, you ain't gonna watch no damn Squid Games, brother.
I'll tell you another one that I watched that I binged was Netflix. It's called Tales from the Loop.
I saw that, but I scrolled past it, but I didn't watch it. You said, is it good?
It's good. You gotta get into it. It's a bit sci-fi, but yeah, it's really good.
We don't watch anything sci-fi around here. Just history documentaries by Ken Burns.
Yes.
Well, I'll watch those as well.
No, that's all right. Marissa has a question. If you want to pass the buck there, Marissa's got a question.
Yeah, I'll let Marissa ask the question. Okay,
right,
so
Marissa,
this question it's from the chat.
Since Marissa wants to take over the show.
Yeah. Who's your favorite actor?
Who's my favorite actor?
Yes.
You only get one. She said favorite.
I've been usurped by the chat. But that's okay. Yes.
Oh man. It's a great question.
Isn't the answer always Kevin Bacon?
Stop it. He's good, but
we are linked to Kevin Bacon, by the way. We are 2 degrees from Kevin Bacon, thanks to having Bruno Amato on the show, who is a congressional candidate and actor. So we are only 2 degrees from Kevin Bacon. Maybe one day you can do a movie with him and get us closer.
We'd still be 2 away if he did a movie with him.
No. Hold on. So if you literally did something with him, you're 0 degrees, right?
Yes.
No.
Or
no?
Would that be 1 or 0? I thought it would be 0.
I think you would be the 1.
Okay, then it wouldn't help. Never mind. All right. So
quick Google will solve this.
Your constituents, look, Dr. Owens, your constituents want to know who's your favorite. Everything depends on this right now. The entire election.
Oh gosh. Okay. If that's the case, Morgan Freeman. Final answer.
Ooh.
Final answer.
It would have been landing. Except he couldn't save the country or the planet in what movie was that? Asteroid movie, not Armageddon. The other one that came out like a week later.
Contact.
I don't remember the name of it. There was 2. Remember, there was 2 asteroid movies that came out like the same year, like within 2 weeks of each other. Apparently, when I turn my vibration off on my phone, it doesn't turn off.
No,
I
yeah,
told off my vibrator.
Yeah,
All right,
that's
so-
what he kept calling it before the show started. It's like, oh, my vibrator's still on. I'm like, whoa. Gotta turn my vibrator off. All right,
Though, you know
buddy.
what? I did
Yeah.
download what's a great app for your phone, the fake taser. And I'd run around poking my 7-year-old with the fake taser as part of like the game. And he'll be like, don't tase me, bro. And I'm tasing him all day long. All right.
The name of that movie was Deep Impact.
Deep Impact.
Deep Impact. Okay.
Giggity.
I watched it with my vibrator. Deep Impact. All right. Anyway.
Special shout out, honorable mention. He's no longer with us, but Chadwick Boseman.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
I was watching Civil War yesterday and I turned to the wife and I was like, I just can't believe that he's gone. Man.
Yeah.
Like he's captivating. All right, so let's get to some policy.
Time out. We got some stuff from the chat.
Yeah, I was going to get to that one. You got the same one
go
I
ahead.
do from
Go ahead.
Demetrius Moore. Can you speak to the proposed redistricting in Gwinnett County by the right?
So redistricting is problematic all through the state. Gwinnett, for those you do not know, is a major county due north of Atlanta, still in the Atlanta metro area. It's probably the second largest county in the state of Georgia, probably right above 1 million people, probably. So there's several aspects of the redistricting as it relates to Gwinnett County. The one that most people will probably talk about or hear about is the congressional districts that make up Gwinnett. Mainly the congressional district 6 and 7 was redistricted quite a bit. Congressional district 7 mainly being in Gwinnett County. That was a district that Republicans lost in 2018, and they won it back. Actually, they lost Congressional District 6 and Congressional District 7. Congressional District 6, they redistrict to make it completely untouchable, as some would say, but it's much more red now. And they make Congressional District 7, which in Gwinnett County, a lot more blue. This is something that Republicans are doing across the state and many states to basically, decide who voters are going to be able to have for their leadership. Gwinnett County is one of those counties that is highly growing, highly diverse, and quite frankly, adds a lot to Georgia with the diversity that it brings, as well as a lot of good jobs, a lot of good companies are in that area. But the control aspects of trying to remain Republicans remain in control in a lot of areas. Gwinnett's a county that's gone solidly blue now. A lot of Republicans are kind of searching for answers in Gwinnett County. But it's the same thing that's happening all over the state, right? Republicans are trying to remain in the political power in a state that's quickly becoming blue. Gwinnett was one of those counties in 2018 that really swung the pendulum when leader Stacey Abrams ran, if you guys remember, in 2018. In one of those counties that Stacey Abrams won, but then also there was a host of other candidates that were Democratic candidates that actually won in Gwinnett County, shifting the political power of that county. So that's the way it works, and then the redistricting comes along and they play with lines to try to grab back seats where they can.
And it seems like there's a super large, because I was just looked up Gwinnett County, and there's the largest Buddhist temple or whatever over there.
Yeah.
And it's like 10% Asian, which doesn't sound like totally crazy to a lot of people, but in Georgia, that is a lot of Asian people. Like that is a hyper-focused group of Asian people.
Yeah, Gwinnett County, when I spoke about diversity, it was a little understated. Gwinnett County is a very, very diverse county in our state. I mean, and not just by different races or nationalities, by numbers, as you were saying, right? I mean, it's
right.
Very diverse, very diverse population they have there for sure.
All right, and it looks like Tim Bristol, friend of the show, has a question. There's like, what is your stance on automatic voter registration at age 18?
Yeah. Well, I think there should be there definitely should be automatic voter registration at 18. I completely support that. In Georgia, there is you can register to vote actually at 17 and a half. At 17 and a half years old, you can't
Oh.
vote until you're 18, but at 17 and a half, you can actually register to vote. So I'm definitely in support of that and would like to see that more as an initiative carried out through our high schools. I equate the same way that you may be on the yearbook club, there should be a club set aside for voter registration, and students, could get together, seniors could rally together and make sure that other students actually got elected. Perfect opportunity for history teachers to kind of talk about civics in school. And they can do so by rallying around this opportunity you have to register 17 and a half year olds.
I like
But
it.
definitely automatic. And another aspect of that too is first, we're assuming that's first time registered voters. But I think in the state of Georgia, it's across the country, we should have same day voting. The idea
Right.
of being able to automatically register on the spot, being that you have the requisite requirements, to register to vote. Look, we're in a completely different age now, right? I can understand at some point in time, 10, 15, 20 years ago, when your voter file and mine was housed in some filing cabinet, right? There was a need
In
to
an
have
office.
time to go through and validate and check all this out, make the updates. Now, all of this is computerized. It's computerized, it's networked together. The idea that someone should be able to show their information and be able to register and then go vote is something that all states should have. But currently, only about half the states in the country have voter registration that's set up that way, and Georgia is not one of them.
But, one of my dig question or my 4 Down Territory questions was going to be related to cybersecurity. It was just going to be a dumb, funny question, like what's the silliest virus name you ever saw or whatever. But seeing as that is part of your background, apparently the wife let the dog in. That's great. But the question becomes,
Puppy.
when you hear a lot about people talking about worrying about internet voting, right, or the modems inside of of the voting machines, all that type of stuff, can you speak to the integrity of election security, for the layman out there and the person who's peddling conspiracy that some guy with a zip drive changed the entire election across the country?
Yeah, definitely. So, as you mentioned, cybersecurity is my trade, it's my profession. It's what I do for a living, and I've consulted on hundreds of different projects. Some of the largest companies in the world. As a matter of fact, I've been on international delegations to different parts of Europe and other countries. And here in the U.S., I've worked in some of the largest companies in the world on some very complex cybersecurity projects, as well as in direct defense of attacks that came from all the way back from, if you guys remember, Anonymous, when they were really active in causing disruptions around the internet, to what's happening now with a lot of nation states that are carrying out full national security attempts at undermining our elections or attacking our critical infrastructure systems. Here's the issue when it comes to, and you got a couple of things mixed in there, so I'll kind of unpack them a little bit. When it comes to election systems, you will hear a lot of things on a lot of different sides. What I like to separate first and foremost is true election security measures versus the things we hear about that's not actually accurate. When we hear about voter fraud, when we hear about the election integrity bills that are coming up across the country, those are all based on myths, untruths, things that are kind of blown out of proportion or just flat out lies. I mean, let's just be honest about it, right? So when we're talking about voter fraud and talking about, dead people voting, when we're talking about people climbing under or climbing over walls to come on to vote, we're talking about people moving from other states. They just come here with the intent purpose of voting, or people voting multiple times. All of those things are meant to sow distrust, this misinformation, it's known lies, to rally and gin bases up, to have reasons to then push forward bills that's going to make it harder for certain people to vote. Okay, so when we're talking about those things around those, that's completely untrue. The real issue that we have, and it's unfortunate, I mean, it was even talked about not too long ago, about all of those things, which you can call the big lie, or you can call voter fraud task force and all that, those things actually hurt us and really take us away from the real discussions we should be having around election security, which is really around how we can ensure that our election systems, which is part of our critical infrastructure as a country, is as safe as it can be when it relates to people being able to vote, right? Timely, accurate voting. And when it comes to the information of voter information being safe when it's stored over the course of the years, right? So we really have to kind of break those two apart, because when we talk about voter security or election security, it is true, right? I mean, a lot of machines, and any machine that's out there is connected to networks interconnected with each other, they're going to have security issues. And those are issues we have to kind of keep monitoring. You have to make sure you have the necessary updates on them. That's why election machines have to be certified. And so we have to be careful when we're talking about this. A lot of people say, hey, well, the machines are hackable. Well, there's not many machines ever created that aren't vulnerable to some kind of attack. Right. But it doesn't mean, to your point, that someone can just walk up, with a thumb drive, stick it in, and automatically change all the results from election. Right? It isn't true.
Yeah.
So
Tom
we have to
Cruise
be careful
did it.
when we're talking about
Yeah.
that.
I saw Tom Cruise in a documentary called what is it? He was downloading the knock list in Mission Impossible, and all he needed was one of those little drives, man. That's all he needed.
You see it on TV, right? And someone's trying to get into the building, they're sitting there banging away on the keyboard. And it's like, oh, I'm trying to stop them from hacking in, or can you hack in, can you hack into this sealed room? And like, I need 2 more seconds, right? And they're like, yeah, I'm in. The light flashes from red to green, and they're in. So I think to a large extent, people have been, have some understanding of what this is supposed to be like based on movies that they've seen and based on, kind of sensationalized events of things that can happen. But at the same time, there are real concerns that we have. And yes, the 2020 elections, by and large, were safe and secure. But it also wasn't without a lot of people doing a lot of hard work and making sure that a lot of things happened the way that they should have, right? It just didn't come out of nowhere. And that's a point that we have to be vigilant on, right? It has to continue to be that way. And next cycle, there will be new threats every single week. In my workplace, in the cyber community, there's constant threats that come up. There's one that was just called Log4j that happened right before Christmas. And most people in the IT and cyber community can tell you this past holiday season wasn't a lot of fun, because most people spent a vast majority of their time actually patching systems that had this worldwide vulnerability. Now, to touch on your other question about internet voting, I do believe that, well, let me start by saying this. Our election systems across the country have not had the amount of time, money, or resources put to them that they really should have had in order to advance elections to where they should be in relation to other sectors and other areas within critical infrastructure, right? And if we're talking about, the airline industry, if we're talking about especially fintech, right? Finance, banking industry, many other industries that's made a lot of leaps and bounds over the last, 10 years. Election industry hasn't really made those leaps and bounds. You guys seen them, they'll have something come out, and there's plenty of people out there saying, oh yeah, that's already hackable, and it just came out. The state of Georgia, we spent $100 million on election machines just a couple of years ago. And they will need upgrades. They will need monitoring and ensuring that they have the latest grading on them. But I do look forward for us spending more time and energy, more vision put into ultimately strengthening our democracy by having more people to vote. The way we're going to do that is by making it easier for people to vote. Right. It's not going to happen. We talk about lines being 4, 5, and 6 hours long. Let's be honest, that deters people from going voting, right? Absentee votes makes it a little bit easier for people, but for a lot of people, they find it to be a cumbersome process and go through. And people still don't kind of get that feeling of voting. Internet voting, remote voting has the propensity, has the capability to truly revolutionize voting in a way that we have not seen in the modern era. And I truly believe has the capability to exponentially grow the number of people that actually take part in our election process. Can you imagine what it's going to do to the number of youth out there when they are able to vote from their cell phone? The idea of people being able to open an app, to be able to, use some form of biometrics, to be able to validate themselves with the system, and then being able to have their voice heard in a matter of minutes in the comforts of their home. I can't sit here today in all honesty and tell you guys, yeah, this is something that we can do now, this year or next year. What I can tell you is that there is certain segments of the American population that are already doing it. Some of our soldiers and our service members that are serving overseas do have some form of electronic voting that happens remotely. There's a states, West Virginia actually piloted the ability to vote from a mobile app that they were able to do. I am a firm believer in technology. I do believe that that's a path forward, but I do, as someone who practices in the cybersecurity realm, understand that we have to be very, very careful when doing so. But I absolutely believe it's possible. We just have to spend the time, money, and effort in doing so. But I do believe that's one of the most powerful things that's on the horizon that we will be able to do to both secure the vote in a modern way and also just explode the number of people that actually are able to take part in our electoral process.
And it's funny you say that, because the same people who are always harping about election security are not the same people who are talking about election availability. Like, they don't want to make it easier for people to vote. They just want to see what the answer was and be like, I knew it. See, this is bullshit. Somebody's cheating. It's like, well, you're not even interested in everyone being able to vote. So I don't know how you're interested in the count of the vote after you've lost. It's very convenient when you do and do not care about elections.
And they had, so when you were in the military, you guys voted by mail, right?
Yes.
Generally, yeah. So what is your thoughts on the whole argument about, I'm fine with mail-in voting, but I just don't like unsolicited ballots? Give us the case for unsolicited ballots, if there is one.
Well, I want to clarify that for what happened in Georgia. It technically was not unsolicited ballots. What they did was, because we were in COVID in 2020, the Secretary of State sent out ballot requests or ballot applications to every registered voter in the state. You then had the option as to whether you wanted to fill it out and mail it back in or not. I know a lot of people that actually did, and some people didn't. Early voting isn't new. Absentee voting is not new to Georgia. It's been around for quite some time, but it only been used at somewhere around 7 to 10% probably.
Wow.
What happened during the 2020 election, that skyrocketed up to about 32% of people that actually took advantage of that. Now, sending out the absentee ballot application was a large part of that, but obviously COVID, people did not want to go to the ballot box, and they also found the convenience, right, of ballot drop boxes that were strategically placed around the state, where people could go at their leisure, right, and drop the ballot off at any time. That has since changed. They changed the law around that because there was the unfounded concern that there would be ballot stuffing and all this other stuff going on. But the ability to vote by mail, is great. I mean, it is, in my eyes, has been no more or less secure than voting in person.
Yeah, and because everyone gets their W-2 in the mail. Everyone does a lot of people do their taxes through the mail. There's a ton of stuff that's done through the mail. But now that this vote has come up to put, again, it's very convenient when people have their gripes with certain things. They use it for everything else, but it's like, can't use it for that. You have all of your bank information on your cell phone. Your social security numbers on there several times on several different apps. You got, your tax stuff you can do on there. But voting,
exactly,
that's impossible.
Many states allow firearms registrations by mail as well.
Yeah, there's two basic premises here. One is that you have to come from a perspective that you actually want more people participating in the voting process. Right? So to start with the paradigm shift there, that I and my candidacy, what we're talking about is we're coming from a position that we actually want more people to take part in the process. And that is the exact opposite. And I said, think about it from this perspective. Your tax dollars are literally going to an office that has made it a priority for people not to be able to vote, right? Instead of the exact opposite, where I'm looking at, hey, I don't want to spend your tax dollars.
Say that. I don't want to step on you, but that was super profound. Say that statement again.
Yeah, this is about
your tax dollars are going to where?
Yeah, fundamentally speaking, your tax dollars, the tax dollars you're spending, going into the Secretary of State's office that will be
Yeah.
spent to find ways for you not to be able to vote.
That is astonishing.
When you think about it from that perspective, and you look at the things that have been done, whether it's through different policies, exact match, right, is one where, and we all know what populations that's going to impact more, right? What populations of people are more likely to have, an asterisk, an apostrophe, an accent, or a hyphen in their name, because those are the people that's most impacted when you look at the exact match, right? Saying that what you sign on your ballot has to match what the signature you have on your driver's license or what they have in the system, right? So you have policies like that. We have situations to where another example that I like to give is that when people are removed from the rolls, right? The purging, as you guys have sure have heard, that takes place in Georgia, which is overzealous. And
was it
and many people are
300,000 or
purged
was it?
Say it again.
Was it 300,000 or was it 30,000?
300,000.
It was
and there
300.
another
Okay.
180 something thousand, right? I mean, it is. We're talking upwards of a 500,000 people have been on the rolls or have been on the list at one point in time to be purged. And so again, you're taking this basic premise that we want the least amount of people to vote as possible. In order to be able to maintain, and then it's like the current secretary takes the approach that, hey, I want to make sure we have secure voting. I want to make sure everyone's able to vote. That the votes are counted correctly and that it's audible and it is correct. That is true. However, if you're controlling who gets to vote in the first place, you can feel a lot better when you're counting votes at the end, right? So we have to change that paradigm. And make it a true shift when the Secretary of State's office true role is to ensure that we're bolstering and expanding democracy by first and foremost making sure as many people that are legally eligible to vote actually take place in that process. And that means doing things like shortening lines. It means we make sure that when polling locations are changed, we do everything we can to notify people that polling locations have changed, that we don't arbitrarily find reasons to shut down polling locations in primarily Black and brown neighborhoods. These things are systematically done. So when I talk about this being an insidious institutional process, when you look at how it's carried out, you have no other doubt but to conclude that this is what is happening. And there's been accounts of this happening all over the state as it relates to ultimately people's voice not being able to be heard, and that voice being silenced mainly in certain demographics in certain areas within the state. And we all know what it is. We call it what it is. It's mainly Black and brown communities.
So are you on board with maybe doing it statewide? And maybe if I annoy enough people, I can annoy enough guests to get this a federal thing. Making Election Day a holiday. It is a paid holiday, and so that everybody is off of work. There is no way because that 9 times out of 10, that's why people aren't voting, is because I have to work. I have bills. I have kids to feed. I have all this stuff. Dutch doesn't read his text messages. Go ahead, Dutch, because I just lost my train of thought.
Well, I just realized that's our guest from last week. Right there.
It's Dino.
So I just want to say, yeah, it's Dino. Yeah, I didn't realize that until just a second. I saw his picture up close. I'm like, hey, Dino. So that's one of your constituents there. But he raises a good point. Every rule Republicans just changed in Georgia are rules they put in place to try to beat President Obama. The left used their accommodations to turn the state blue. I had a question from Twitter. It was more or less a question about our show from a couple of weeks ago when we had on Natalie James and Dr. Jillian Bettino, who are running for Senate in Arkansas and Wisconsin, respectively. So this gentleman is a Republican, and he sent me we had an interesting conversation. He watched a few episodes, so I appreciate that. And here was I'd like you to, this isn't really a question, but I'd like you to speak on this. Sure. What he says is that, and it's a long email, so I'm just going to paraphrase it. He says, just because one doesn't agree, well, let me skip down past that. So here's the paraphrasing. I have never seen voter suppression. It's never happened in my neighborhood. So he has a hard time believing what he says here is, as far as voters having to wait 4 hours or have to drive 50 miles to vote, that is wrong. I don't care what side that is, but I've never seen that happen. So I'm basically what he's saying is, because he hasn't seen it, therefore it doesn't exist. Like, I believe the guy's asking me a legitimate, like being honest and legitimate when he's saying that, because he hasn't seen it. But can you speak on that a little bit for me?
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's a legitimate question, and I do get asked that a bit. We also have to put ourselves in the frame of lived experiences, right? And there's vastly different experiences based on what, exactly as you said, what neighborhood you happen to live in.
That you're in, yeah. And he also said, I don't want to skip this part. He said, I've never waited more than 10 minutes to vote in my life.
Exactly. And I can tell you, even within the county I live in, there is parts of the county to where a 20-minute wait is a long wait. But there's also parts in my same county that a 2-hour wait would be pretty quick. So it's all about lived experiences, where you can have vastly different voting experiences, depending on where you live. And that is one of the exact problems that we have with the way that the systems are set up, right? In today's age when we live, and I'll talk about this in the context of the question, I look at this in this way, particularly here in Georgia. We live in a state that, first of all, we have the world's busiest airport, Hartsfield-Jackson Airport. You know, we put millions of people and millions of pieces of cargo through, just like I'm sure where you guys live. We have Amazon, right? We have FedEx, UPS headquarters is here in Georgia. We are very good at being able to move items and people around logistically.
Yeah.
Right.
You stole it from Chicago. Thank you.
So the idea that we can't put 2,000 people through a precinct in a reasonable amount of time is a farce.
Yeah, it's absurd.
Right. So the idea, and it, to me, when someone says that, you know, only having to wait 10 minutes, that is exactly proving the point that we're making here. Right. Mm-hmm. So if it was true that everyone, you know, had a 2 or 3 hour wait, everyone would get it and be like, yeah. But the fact that in certain neighborhoods, in certain counties, in certain areas, that it's not, that is the problem in itself. We have to make sure that no one waits hours, 3, 4, 5 hours to be able to vote. We have enough smart systems that we can put in place. We have enough data modeling, you know, and forecasting that we can put in to make sure we get the right machines in the right places. But but I do want to address the other thing about voter suppression. Voter suppression is a term that is used when any tactic, process, policy is put into place that adversely affects one's ability to be able to vote, right? So it means that comes in a very measured ways when we're looking at this. And what would be seen as suppressing one person's vote may not be seen as suppressing some other person's vote. Let me give you a quick example. Placing a pair of police cruisers in front of a voting precinct. In some areas, that means nothing at all. In other areas, that may deter some people from showing up to vote, right? The same thing could potentially be having a polling precinct in a police station, right?
Right.
Those things can be completely innocuous to some people, and I totally understand. But it will deter certain people from being able to vote. Voter suppression could as well be when a polling location gets closed that is in a community church, and it's been at that church for 20 or 30 years, and all of a sudden now that polling location is closed for whatever reason may be. And what we have to understand at this when we're talking about it, it doesn't mean that it's necessarily a discriminatory law or statute that's on the books that, you know, that the Department of Justice can look at and go, oh, this is absolutely wrong. This bill or this statute is wrong. A lot of times it is either how it's interpreted, in most cases how it is carried out, right? So what happened in Georgia,
give an example of that.
Yeah, what happened a few years ago in the state of Georgia was there is a law that's on the books that makes a lot of sense, and it says that all polling locations have to be ADA compliant, right? American Disabilities Act. And that makes perfect sense. We want to make sure we're not discriminating against disabled people and they have the opportunity to have their voices heard as well. However,
Right.
the Secretary of State's office hired a consultant to go out across the state and ensure that polling locations were in fact ADA compliant. The outcome of that was the majority of those locations that were closed, again, happened to be in certain neighborhoods, happened to be in Black communities mainly. And I won't say it targeted churches, but there was a large number of churches, i.e., older churches in Black communities that happened to be among this list. Now, why would that be? Well, a lot of churches may not be ADA compliant, or that ramp may not be at the exact degrees that the policy says that it should. But my point about this is that how you can take something that, from a policy standpoint, seems to be for a very good reason, but when you go to implement that, the targeting or the outcome of that has a skewed result. So again, I understand some people will say they haven't experienced or haven't seen voter suppression. They don't know what the talk is about. But again, if you happen to be Hispanic and you have two last names and you go to the polling location and it says, sorry, we don't see a Jose Martinez Lopez listed. Oh, but we have a Jose Martinez listed. That could be a problem. And again, if you're not subject to that community, you never had that happen to you because you only have a first, middle, and a last name. You don't happen to have a first, middle, and two last names. You would not have experienced that. So again, I'll go back to the same way I started. It is about lived experiences and how voting laws impact certain communities over others. And that is what we're struggling with in the state of Georgia.
And go ahead. Go ahead, Dutch.
Real quick. Is there anything in place for people, and I know this might trigger people and I don't give a damn. Is there anything in place for people who are trans, who may, be born Michelle and then now they go by Michael and they go to the polling place and you have, especially, I don't know what I haven't read all of the Georgia law. I've been more studying the Texas one. I know the Texas one's not quite as bad as the Georgia one in a lot of ways, especially with the Sunday thing. But like, for example, in Texas, because you have the and in Arkansas now you have the ID caveat that's thrown in there. Has anyone even looked at that to try to make sure that, I don't even care how people feel about trans people, but there are people and they should be able to vote, right? So we want to make sure that we're not disenfranchising someone. Is that a conversation at all? Because I haven't heard anything about it. And I know that some people who I've talked to who are trans have told me that that's something that they've run into in the past.
I haven't heard it, and I'm kind of leery to even talk about it because I don't want to give anyone any ideas about with session open about starting a new bill right now. What I can tell you is that we encourage people to regularly check their voter registration status. And if a situation like that, particularly if someone has legally changed their name, is that they need to make sure their voting registration has been updated and it's on file at the Secretary of State in the way that matches their driver's license and what is going to be on their official ballot. Now, a challenge that I see coming from that with the new bill is more the restrictions when it comes to being able to vote provisionally, right, or having a provisional ballot. What we normally tell people in Georgia is that if you go to a polling location to go vote, do not allow them to turn you away, right? If they can't give you your ballot, then vote provisionally. At least make sure you do not leave without voting. Some of those laws were changed now. Whereas if you go to a polling location, you can be turned away or you can be sent to your correct polling location and not be allowed to vote provisionally. My concern with that too is that if someone goes to a polling location and they are turned away for whatever reason and told to go to another polling location, unfortunately, we know a large percentage of that time, people aren't going to go to another polling location, right? They're not going to go to the election headquarters to go get that problem fixed. They're going to go on to work, or they're going to go pick their kids up, or they're just going to go back home, right? So it's important that when people do take their time out to go vote, that they're actually able in some way, shape, form, or fashion to actually cast a vote, right? And we see this too with going back to I think the comment you got from Twitter. I'll give you an example. Where I live, I live in Georgia traffic about an hour and 40 minutes from where I work. Right, trying to vote either before I drop my kids off in the morning, go by the polling location, or try to get off of work, an hour and a half, 2 hours away, and get back into the county or back to my polling location is very, very, very hard. Now, I make that happen because, I have, the luxury of sometimes just being able to shift a meeting around, right? Or call in and tell my team I'll be in a couple of hours late, or, I'll just take the morning off. Getting back to Mikey's point about why it's important that we have a national day of voting, so people don't have all those issues. Those are challenges. So, could some say, hey, is that part of voter suppression? Well, if we don't have polling locations open on Saturdays and particularly on Sundays, Sundays is when most people have the day off of work. Why should every polling location in America should be open at least one Sunday during voting, right? To give people an opportunity to go vote. So simply not having weekend voting or not having Sunday voting in some people's eyes can be seen as part of voter suppression.
Is there anything that's actually stopping? Because I get, like, for whatever reason, ADA compliance or whatever the reason that they claim it to be, that certain polling locations need to be moved. Does every location have to be ADA service? So it's like, okay, this one is not completely ADA compliant. It's only 98%, but we're still going to leave a drop box here. You know what I'm saying? So it's not just like, hey, I'm going to take it from point A, move it 18 miles north. You can still drop off of here. The ballots are over here, and then you can drop them off over, or your mail-in ballots you can drop off over here.
That's the way that it is in California, by the way. That almost every single polling place has a drop box right outside of it, in California it's super freaking easy to vote. Like I went, and I want you to answer the question, but like I went to vote in 2020, and they said that I had already. They didn't say I already voted, but they said I wasn't on their roll, right? They said,
"What did you say? What, you voted twice? You voted twice?
I voted twice.
As a true Chicagoan.
Yeah, and
ladies and gentlemen, we got it.
But and not only am I from Chicago, but I was voting in California. So I live in California, and I went to vote, and they said that my location had been moved from the place I voted the last two times, right, doctor? So when I went in there, I was like, well, the letter that you guys sent me said this is where I'm supposed to come. It's literally a block away from my house. Where am I supposed to go? They told me the location. It was like 11 miles away. And I'm like, all right, well, I don't have time. I just fill out a provisional ballot right then and there. It was as easy as pie. I was in there for 12 minutes with doing a provisional ballot. And that's not the way that it is in most states, right? So,
right. Yeah, they actually, that's one of the laws that actually changed in Georgia now, is that you can't do that provisional ballot if you happen to show up at the wrong location for whatever confusion may be, is that you're going to be sent to your correct location, right? And again, that's where I kind of said that's where that drop-off can occur, because chances are you may not ever get to that correct location.
Yeah, so, people have like, what people don't think about is like, I'll give you my situation, right? My kids, I work, obviously. I get off work to vote. Maybe I leave work at 1:30 to go vote. I have to get my kids at 2:05. After that, my day is over. So if they change my voting location, unbeknownst to me, and I can't fill out a provisional ballot, I now have to make a choice. Do I pick up my kids or do I vote? That is de facto suppression.
Do you love America or no?
Yeah, you're right. So I should
make
be able to
the
vote
kids
then.
Walk. It's good for it. Bills.
Make my 5-year-old walk. Exactly.
You raise them soft, Dutch.
Hey,
I walk 15 miles uphill both ways in the snow, hopping on one foot to keep the other foot warm.
That's right.
Dr. Owens, meet Big Haas, our
no snowshoes.
Our perpetually tardy member who runs a fitness class now. But So let me ask you this real quick.
Let the man make his bread. Can he make his bread?
No, he's
He ain't
about
putting
to
in on
fired.
none of these bills over here, but he got jokes though.
Yo, send that electric bill right through.
Right. You want me to be on time? You can put it on this comment.
I'll send it over to the good to the good doctor. That'll be my campaign donation. And we'll give you a chance to platform that in a second. But you have a unique background in security, so talk about online voter suppression for a second, because, like, for example, in 2016, there was a huge social media campaign where they were trying to basically disenfranchise white suburban voters and black voters. Between 2012 and 2016, you had about 4 million voters in the 2012 election who didn't vote in 2016, which was traced actively to Facebook campaigns and stuff like that. Can you talk about that aspect of voter suppression and how you can combat that?
Yeah, that's a very big issue for a lot of reasons, right? I think
Russia.
We hear a lot about, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier when we were talking about what the threats actually are, right, and how they manifest themselves. So there is the election security aspect of the machines and how secure they are, and are they air gapped, and what do you do with the thumb drive and someone walks in and rebooting? There's all that, and then there is the more nefarious aspect that is much broader, which is the misinformation, disinformation campaigns that come along with elections now, and how people are being influenced on various different issues, and ultimately various candidates and platforms based on social media. And this is, we do know it's directly targeted at people. Look, what's happening online now and Facebook and all the other social media sites is that these organizations are able to garner so many different data points about you, things that we don't even think about, right? And capture all of those. And I happen to work at one of those companies where it is the job of the company to be able to capture multiple data points about you all throughout your life, where you have money, where you invest your time, where you invest your money, things you like, your likes, your dislikes. And look, most of those things, we put it out there for free, right? I mean, we actively engage. Every time I see someone do another 10-year challenge, I'm just like, oh my gosh, right?
Oh
like,
my God.
Just help them out with their facial recognition scanning, right? And their
no. I want you to rail on that for 30 seconds, because I am so sick of everyone falling for these. Here's the new trend on Facebook. Yes. I went to this school when I grew up. Where did you go? And everyone just starts listing their elementary schools.
They list all their information and puts all the data points there, which is extremely troubling to me, right? Because I understand that information is being captured, it's being analyzed, it's being sliced and diced, it's being indexed, and it's there for a purpose. Now, for not for 1 minute do I want to go to any conspiracy level things or anything nefarious, right? Vast majority of this is being used and being paid for by companies that want to gain access to you and your likes and your dislikes, right? You like Under Armour hats, you like Zelda. Like, it's great for me to know that, right? This screen has been captured and that's been cataloged, and we now know that. Makes it much more likely that Under Armour is going to want to pay for that information. So most of this is really
my phone's ringing. I think it's Under Armour. Hold on.
And systems are getting better and better about this, right? But yes, there's also the flip side of that, where throughout political campaigns and not just campaigns like mine, right? But campaigns that may originate in Russia, right? Or in North Korea, that can purchase ads to send that targeted directly to you, that we know is going to push a button of yours, right? And that, or it's going to talk about something that's near and dear to your heart, right? Someone in your family got cystic
fibrosis.
Cystic fibrosis, yes, I'm sorry. And that's near and dear to your heart. And, there's going to be a candidate in California that's running, and it's going to say, you know what? They pulled funding for research in this area. Well, guess what? You're not going to support that candidate, right? Completely fake, completely unreal, but they can know the number of supporters or people that have someone that's stricken by this disease. Therefore, they're going to target it. Just an example. I'm totally pulling it out of the air. But this is how this works, right? And this now is how external influence can have an impact on all levels and types of campaigns by going off these data points. And, when you work the algorithm, which a lot of these companies and platforms are helping with now, it only reinforces that thing. And next thing you know, there's a group that's set up, to rail against other candidates that feel that way. And all that's completely made up. But guess what? The money I now have to spend as a candidate to combat that, there's no way, right? Because that's now spun up, not out of control. Some foreign entity potentially is already running with that. So that is highly problematic. And yeah, we can talk about how this information is captured and spread out. And the other aspect of this, which gained some traction as well, was about how it was used in an intimidating type factor. I'm going to call it like it is. Domestic terrorism is what we've seen in some aspect of this. And I'll tell you, I was subjected to it myself. In the 2020 election, I was fundraising. We were doing events for now Senator Reverend Warnock and Senator Ossoff. And yes, my guys.
Oh, not another alpha.
And
no, you aren't really. You're not an alpha, are you?
I am not. No.
No, brother Warnock is.
Reverend Warnock is. Yes.
We know. We there's only one alpha allowed on the show, so.
I'm talking about y'all worried about the Illuminati.
Don't hate on the frozenness. Don't hate on the frozenness.
Y'all worried about the Illuminati. We're about the alphas. They in here deep. They all over the place. Every time I turn around, another alpha pop up.
We need some more betas in here.
We were fundraising for them too, and everything was going well. We're getting the information out. We're sharing the flyers and all this, and then we got a series of emails, and the emails were basically like. And I'm paraphrasing here, but it was, we know what you're doing. You're trying to rig this election. We know where you live.
Yeah.
Stop this immediately. We will come see you. And this was in a series of emails, right? And that is in direct impact to try to stop someone from supporting an election that they care about. That's a form of domestic terrorism, right? And that is actually happening now. With the way you can set up, different emails today, same way you'd have like burner phones or whatever. Someone sets up a Gmail account and they go through some anonymous VPN and they send this out, and it is a terroristic threat. I mean, to try to get you to stop you from doing that. Now, this is me. They sent that to. Without knowing my background, and they probably figured they could have some leverage. Wrong person. I actually know exactly who sent that and organizations that they belong to. And I have friends in the FBI.
Hey, Tim?
Tim Bristol.
Yeah,
Tim
we know
Bristol. I know it was you.
Imagine, that happening to other people that we know. That's just out trying to advocate for candidates that they know and trying to do the good work, right, that people do. And all of a sudden they get emails like this. It's terrifying. And it did make news. There was a big discussion about that in Florida because that was pretty rampant down there with trying to impact the vote by sending out these threatening type emails. So
Florida.
Yeah. So this disinformation and misinformation that's being put out is not only meant to kind of cause chaos, sow discord, but it also can have some very, very problematic, borderline illegal type activity tied to it as well.
Well, that's awesome. I know that you're short on time. We've asked you we've talked mostly about voting because running for Secretary of State, like we haven't been talking about healthcare and all the other stuff as well. Yes, but also, he's not like the Secretary of State doesn't have as big of impact when it comes to things like healthcare and stuff like that we talk about.
We got an inside guy.
We're all gonna get free driver's licenses here on Dig on America. But I want Big Haas. Big Haas, why don't you give a closing platform question to Dr. Owens here?
And what up, Big Haas?
Hey, welcome to the show, Big Haas.
Welcome, big homie. Man, you gotta give your man's flowers when you see him. I see you in your in your little gray hoodie. I see you in the gray athletic fit.
It's a gray hoodie day, huh? Is that day?
Today was gray sweatsuit day.
Oh,
So-
shit. Ladies.
Got the gray jogging pants and the gray hoodie on today.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So
All
last
right.
question, you get it.
Last question. So your background is in security,
Cybersecurity.
correct? Cybersecurity.
Yes.
What's the wildest thing you ever came across in your security adventures?
Man, you know that's G14 classified.
I can't talk about that.
Oh,
Come on,
I
bro.
can't talk about that. I
It's
can't talk about. I
G14.
will tell you one thing. So I'm still work as in the United States Marine Corps in a volunteer capacity. So this past year, I got assigned to the United States Marine Corps Cyber Auxiliary, which is a part of the Marine Corps that trains, advises, and consults Marines on all different types of activity that goes on there. So, we're not operational. It's voluntary in a way. I'm proud of being a Marine Corps veteran. But we talk about things in a hypothetical sense. I think, the craziest thing I made reference to before, and I'm getting off that subject, going on something else. Well, I mentioned
Get blocked up, bro.
Yeah. Be a political on him. Be a politician. Go for it.
I mentioned Anonymous before, right? So this is back in the day a bit, but Anonymous had actually they were calling companies out, right? They were like, "We're going to shut down this company. We're gonna hack this." I mean, they were pretty bold.
Real quick. Anonymous. Good guys, bad guys, gray guys in between.
Anonymous, good in their eyes, right? I mean, I think today we would call them hacktivists, right? Or organized hackers for good is how they would see themselves, right? And I mean, they would take up just what they felt was just causes, and there's a lot of people who's going to have a lot of thoughts about them, but for the most part, they ensured that they would say what they were going to do, and
they gave everybody warning
several times. They actually made reference that they were going to shut down an international airline, not a U.S. based airline, but an international airline, because they were not. They didn't agree with their human rights practices, child working relationship or child working labor laws, and actually said they were going to take down that airline. Fortunate for that airline, I was the one that was responsible for their national security, and their cybersecurity. It was tenuous. It was a lot of work. I was successful in making sure that they stayed up, and Anonymous did come after them just like they said they would. But we were actually able to keep it up. And again, with the reason that I'm running for Secretary of State is because I have these experiences, right? I mean, again, like working in projects in over 100 countries, directly dealing with outfits, like the People's Army of China, Anonymous. I spent some time in Ukraine several years ago, back when Russia had first invaded Crimea, and that was going on. And I think I told you guys I was one of 16 cyber professionals that went to Ukraine. Russia was literally shutting down their electrical grid. 250,000 people was out of power, and I'm telling you, it gets pretty cold in Ukraine if you didn't know. So, but these are experiences that I bring to the table as Secretary of State, understanding not only what our current challenges are with voting, and a lot of talk tonight about voter suppression and the tactics that are going on, but the reality of it is, in the grand scheme of things, the Secretary of State's office and the duties that they are to discharge inherently should be nonpartisan, guys, right? It is about ensuring that everyone has access to the ballot, that we expand our democracy by having people's voices heard at the ballot box. And also from a business aspect, we didn't talk as much about tonight, but to ensure that we can have, grow businesses and more people can start up businesses. And I always say, I want to take people from having a side hustle and having a grind and having a hobby to actually having a legitimate licensed business, right? And then hopefully helping them grow and flourish from there. So, I mean, these are experiences I've got. I've worked at at the executive table at a Fortune 500, all the way to starting a business in my garage and building that up to a very successful company. So having the experiences to bring to the table, and someone that's not just looking for another political promotion, is what I bring to this in a way that I don't know that many people across the country can point to a Secretary of State candidate and go, this is someone that's coming in with this level of expertise and skill that wants to apply this to what in a lot of ways is what a lot of people have seen in the past as being a bureaucratic type job.
Shouts out to Lauren Hubbard running for Congress in Fresno, fellow candidate here. So super last question. Just to steal a line from Cenk Uyghur. Super last question.
PPS.
Talk about like where do you stand when it comes to businesses? Well, there's a big debate lately, and I know you don't have a lot of time, so understand that you might have a truncated answer a bit here, but there's a big debate about raising the minimum wage and the ability of businesses to remain successful and profitable and that sort of thing. Can you speak about what your position would be on how do we raise the minimum wage for businesses while making sure that we protect smaller business owners? I don't give a shit about your Amazons or your IBMs, but your small to mid-sized business, your HVAC contractor, your florist, that sort of thing. How can you help those people? That's
a fantastic question for a congressional candidate that's running for Congress. Going to have to vote on that stuff. My role as Secretary of State is to make sure that we get more businesses created. Right. I do want to focus on small businesses. I want to focus on minority business. I want to focus on women-owned businesses to make sure that they can get a good start. Right. You're right. A lot of small businesses may be challenged. And I think it's also one of those things where, depending on where you live in the country, people will have different experiences as to what that looks like. But as Secretary of State, I really want to. What I want to do, I want to make sure that those small businesses are able to get contracts and win bids with their state, right? With school districts. I want to make sure they're on the preferred vendors list for the county that they live in, right? I want to make sure that when we really push to bring in large automotive manufacturing companies, that they're able to get contracts with them. I want to, look at our architects and help make sure that they're building more economically and environmental friendly and safe buildings. These are the things that I really want to focus on, because to me, when we're able to have businesses that are able to have fresh ideas and grow, that we're going to see business growth continue to grow. Right. My concern is not bringing in innovation, right? Getting stagnant and having other states, other countries ahead of us on an innovation factor scale, to where it doesn't matter how much money we're talking about paying someone per hour. If we're behind in the technology, if other states and other countries are actually, getting those companies and those jobs, it's not going to matter. So I really want to focus on those things. To ensure that we're doing those things going to help businesses day one, so that they can grow and thrive.
Sorry, man, you got one more from the chat. Is it ethical for the Georgia Secretary of State to preside over a governor's election that he's participating in? So in other words, in 4 years from now, after you get elected and you're running against Marjorie Taylor Greene in the governor's race, will you recuse yourself?
I know exactly that's going back to the 2018 election. I mean, the simple answer is, I think it's unethical, right? It's not something that I would do. I'll put it that way, right? Although running for governor in 4 years is absolutely something I'm not planning on doing either. My goal as Secretary of State is to expand the number of people that are able to have their voices heard at the ballot. I am going into this race with the clear thought about what I can actually accomplish as Secretary of State, what I can get done. I'm an engineer by heart, right? By trade. I mean, that is, I look to find problems and to solve them, right? So going into this, I'm looking at, again, why are our lines so long? Why can we not move forward on some kind of ballots that's going to enhance the system? How can we expand and put more money and effort into looking at what the future of voting is going to look like? What are we going to do when we're looking at Russia and China that are looking at finding ways to infiltrate our systems? These are the challenges that I'm looking at, right? So I'm not looking at what's coming forward down the road for me, but yeah, I mean, from a simple thing as voting, like I said before, in a perfect world, the Secretary of State's office would be nonpartisan, because I truly believe that the work that we're doing is of national importance, and it's not about Democrats. I want to make sure that elections are fairer, freer, more accessible for everyone. Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians, Independents. It doesn't matter. As a campaign, if you're running for governor, if you're running for city council, if you're running for school board, it's your job to make sure that that person goes to that ballot box and votes for you. My job as Secretary of State is to make sure that person is eligible to vote, actually has an opportunity to go vote. And that, that is where I really want to focus in on. It's, for me, I'm a Democrat. I'm a former 2-time chairman of the Democratic Party in a major county in the state. But that's not what my goal is going into becoming Secretary of State, right? I will leave my party hat, if you will, at the door when it comes the same way I did when I was in the United States Marine Corps, right? I served under Republican presidents. I served under Democratic presidents. The mission was still the same, right? My brothers and sisters that I served with, we're still the same brothers and sisters. And so, I think we've got to put square focus on this about being able to accomplish things, getting things done, making sure people's voices are heard, making sure that our critical election systems are up for the task and up for the challenge, and that we're putting the Secretary of State's budget, and we're prioritizing that budget and making sure that we're doing the things that we need to do. And as I think Dutch, we mentioned earlier, that budget is focused on we're spending money to make sure people are able to vote, that we're not spending money to make sure people are not able to vote.
Right. Cool.
Appreciate
Really
it, man.
that simple.
Here. Drink
Let's give you center stage to give your parting shots here, and give us all your socials and how can people donate to your campaign.
Yeah, I think I'll say it again. My goal as Secretary of State is to ensure that we have the most robust, effective, efficient, and secure election systems in the country, bar none. I have the experience, the expertise, and the background to be able to make that happen. And but to ultimately make that happen, I'm going to need all your support. This race is going to be a hotly contested race. It's a statewide election. I do plan on being the Democratic nominee, which means I will face a Republican challenger that will probably have the support of former President Donald Trump, which we're not looking forward to. We need someone that's going to stand up and really face the challenges that we have today and the threats that we have coming tomorrow. I'm asking each and every one of you for your support. Please, first and foremost, visit my social media. Start off with my Twitter at Owens4GA. Please follow, share the information that's out there. You can also find me on Instagram and on Facebook. Follow, tweet, retweet, make it happen, you guys. Lastly, I will ask for your donation. Please go to my website at owensforgeorgia.com. That's Owens, OWENS, Georgia.com. Donate what you can, $5, $10. I will say something that surprises a lot of people is that the maximum contribution for this race is actually $7,600. That just shows you, right? This is a statewide race, how serious it is and how much money that we expect to come into this. And again, from the Republican side, this is a challenge, right? They know the state of Georgia is turning. It is changing. People's voices are being heard. President Biden actually carried the state. We put 2 senators in the Senate last year in the state of Georgia. So this is going to be a very, very tough race. We're going to need support from people, not only in Georgia, but from across the country, and to call these things out. I've made reference tonight to several atrocities that we have that's impacting Georgia, but it's important for everywhere across the country because these bills are not limited to just Georgia, right? The threats and the attacks that we are seeing is not going to be limited to Georgia. It's happening here, and if it's not happening in your state yet, unfortunately, it may be happening soon. So let's cut the snake off at the head right away, right? And we do that by ensuring that we're supporting candidates, particularly in Georgia, that are going to be able to get the job done. That's going to lead this effort, not only in Georgia but across the country, to ensure that we have fair, free, effective, efficient, secure voting for everybody. You guys, Big Haas, Dutch, Mikey, I want to thank you guys for having me on tonight, man. This has been a fantastic opportunity. I'm thankful for any time we get the opportunity to have, to expand our campaign, talk about our message, but really, talk about something that's impacting everybody, right? This is voting, man. It's important to everybody. And I'll go back to talking about those 17 and a half year olds I mentioned earlier tonight. because we have to get our youth continually involved in this process. And it starts from making sure they're registered to vote and they start to take part in that. I got 2 little kids. I got an 11-year-old son and a 10-year-old daughter. And yeah, if I need to call in work late, I do, because I make sure I take my kids with me every single time I go vote. They haven't always understood in the past, but at 10 to 11, they're getting the gist. I just asked them last week, they're talking about why voting is important. And the question they brought to me, which I think was vitally important, was why what they called old teenagers, which is 18, 19-year-olds to them, why they don't see the importance of voting, and they asked me, like, what are you going to do to make sure you get more younger people voting? And they said the same thing that was asked earlier. Well, I think more people would vote if they could do it from their iPad, is what they said, right? If they could vote for their iPad, maybe they would vote. If we talked about things that was more important to them, maybe they would vote. So yeah, those 17-and-a-half-year-olds, we've got to get them registered. When you show up, we've got to make sure they do the things they need to do. They're not our future; they're our present, right? So we've got to make sure they're involved and engaged as well. So thanks, guys, again for having me. We can do this. We can make this happen. We can ensure that everyone in the state of Georgia that's eligible to vote gets the opportunity. We can swing and turn the tide for the rest of this country, but it starts with what we're doing here.
Such a simple message, yet so many people want to fight you on it.
I'm stamping them, giving them the voucher. All you Georgia Dig on America listeners, get out there.
All 4 of you in Georgia, we are turning you around right now.
We want all 4 of you at the front of the line.
in Georgia.
Don't meet me there, beat me there. I want all y'all out there voting for Mike.
I'd love to have you jump in on a Twitter space or two with Lauren and I and Brett Heinrich and a couple of the other politicians that we are, or the candidates that we're working with. If you're open to it, we'd love to have you jump in and try to promote you on Twitter as well. So thank you very much, sir. Thank you for serving your country, and thank you for running for office. I'll let you, Mike, if you want to say anything before
no.
Okay.
I don't have anything really to say.
When you guys coming to Georgia? When did you guys come to Georgia?
When we invited.
But you won't be able to vote.
When are we invited?
We can't vote. Forget it.
Yeah. No, we were coming. Well, wait. We're Democrats. We're coming to vote. We're talking about? We're
Chicago Democrats. We're Chicago.
Yeah, we're Chicagoans. We vote everywhere. We
vote early. We vote often.
I grew up under the dailies, my entire life.
Emanuel,
a few things.
You see what happens is Rahm Emanuel pulls up the bus and he just drives us state to state. We get out at every polling place and we go in. I'm Joe Smith here again, and there's always a Joe Smith.
I'm John Smith.
Yeah, and James Smith there.
This is James Smith. we're all here to vote for the first time again.
We're not going to feed into that tonight. We're not going to feed into it. Every single voter in Georgia has a unique voter ID number that we can track. We know if I don't care if someone puts a ballot 50,000 times into ballot boxes.
It's like
every Georgia gets one vote and one vote only.
It's like Rob Gronkowski in that AARP commercial. What's your AARP member number? 87.
No, my number is 867-5309.
That's my number too. Unbelievable.
Hey, my ID number is 777-9311.
Is that Mike Jones? What is that?
No. What is that? That's Morris Day in the time. 777-9311. Y'all too young. Y'all too young.
Come on, man. Come on,
all right.
man. I be knowing.
All right. It's 281-330-8004.
Hey,
hit Hassan up on the low because Hassan about to blow.
All right, Dr. Owens. Thank you very much.
Have a great one, man.
We appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. It was a pleasure.
See you later, Mike. I like Mike.
Like Mike. If I could be like Mike. All right.